Okay. All right. So good morning, everyone. Welcome. Thank you for joining us today on our session on incorporating Maverick Advantage activities into academic courses. This is hosted by Maverick Advantage Faculty Engagement Program, part of Center for Research on Teaching and Learning Excellence. My name is Nali Kim, and today we have several faculty fellow mentors with us, as well as our other members of the MAFE team. So, Susan, would you like to introduce yourself?
You're muted, Susan.
Of course I am. My name is Susan Dekian. I am the Service Learning Director in the Center for Service Learning here on campus. I am also the lead person for the Maverick Advantage Faculty Engagement Program, which has been in existence for about a year and a half. And so you can reach me on Teams or dekiant@uta.edu.
All right, thank you so much. We also have Lucinda Burkle, who is...
I don't believe she's on right now. If you
okay.
can just introduce her.
Okay, so we also have Lucinda Burkle, who is MAFE Program Coordinator. And you can all find us or reach us on mafe.uta.edu website. All right, so let's get started. What is Maverick Advantage? The Maverick Advantage program at UTA encourages the development of marketable skills through experiential learning opportunities for our undergraduate students. There are 5 distinguishing activities, and these are community engagement, career development, global engagement, undergraduate research, and leadership development. The purpose of this program is to really give our students that advantage, which will help them to be distinguished from their peers and prepare them for the workforce or future academic endeavors. So there are 5 benefits for the students when they join the Maverick Advantage program. 1, it helps to transform and expand their knowledge and skills. It prepares them for a career or graduate school. It develops characteristics and traits that employers seek. It helps to build their resume before graduation, and it immerses them in real-world hands-on learning. So in order for a student to earn the Maverick Advantage distinguishing that mark, is there are 5 steps that they have to follow. So first, they have to research the activity options that they have, make a plan to participate in these activities, experience 3 of the 5 distinguishing activities, develop their resume and write reflection, and complete the online application. So there's more information about the Maverick Advantage program from the student's perspective on this website, uta.edu/Maverick Advantage. So today we are here to really talk about it from the faculty's perspective, how we could incorporate the Maverick Advantage activities into our academic courses. So the first one that we're going to talk about is research. So it is it's a priority from undergraduate through doctoral and postdoctoral levels, and it can be conducted through classes across multiple disciplines. So here are some of the examples of how undergraduate research can be incorporated into academic courses. So first thing could be you can have students collect data through surveys and personal interviews and analyze the findings. We can have the students conduct naturalistic observations in an organization or social setting. Have students develop original work through creative practice and activities, and of course, participate in research through a variety of methodologies. And as I mentioned, this is just a list of some of the examples, but of course, there are other ways that that you could incorporate research into your courses. So one of our faculty mentors, Karishma Chatterjee, she is from College of Liberal Arts. She is part of Department of Communication. She was able to incorporate the undergraduate research component into her COM 4335, Intercultural Communication. You can find out more about what that process was like by contacting her at this email listed here. The next component that we're going to talk about is leadership. So leadership helps students to discover personal strength and to gain essential competencies that employers are looking for. Some of these skills and qualities include mentorship, inclusive interaction with diverse groups of people, integrity, and relationship building that support them to become an effective leader. So some of the examples of leadership development in academic courses are having students work in a team to lead a class project, present at a conference, and being a committee representative. To share her experience of incorporating this Maverick Advantage component into the course, we have LaDonna Aiken.
Hello.
Hello.
So I would love to talk a little bit about incorporating leadership in the course. So I need to share my screen here to do that. So I will pull that up. Okay. Everybody see that okay?
Yes.
Okay. So a lot of the traits that you mentioned earlier, the activities listed on the website, work in a team, lead a class project, present at a conference, or be a committee representative. These are obviously leadership opportunities. But when I say obviously, I mean, we do a lot of these things in class already, but it's important to tie these into the leadership traits that students are going to be developing. So good communication skills, problem solving, responsibility, trust, all of these traits are leadership traits. And why it's important to recognize that is so that they can identify these things, so that they can see what they're actually getting out of the project. So you may have for instance, you might have a team project. Students are working in a team. Now, in addition to whatever the project is about, you need to recognize that this is a communication opportunity. And so you can do that with reflection. So as you've come up with a project that requires a student team, how can you recognize that communication is part of this? One, they're communicating with each other in a clear, timely way. Two, they learn to acknowledge team contributions and focus more on others and how that they can, help each other. They're asking for feedback on their own communication, and they're open, they're responsive to the other students on their team. And they can listen to complaints. They can respond to those with logic and equity. And they can evaluate those nonverbal messages and intentions a little harder right now with COVID and when you're not always seeing each other face to face, but that's also another good communication trait to have. And so what you can do with this is create a reflection assignment where where you incorporate these traits and these abilities into that reflection. You might ask them, how do you handle complaints, within a team? Help them to see that the leadership traits that they are working on or are using are happening within this other assignment. So you don't have to create like a leadership assignment specifically, but you do need to create like leadership reflection so that you're identifying the opportunity for that. So like I said, most of us have team projects in our classes. I know in my class, we usually have at least one team project, and these are all ways that we can point out that there is a leadership opportunity here. Also, leading a class project, that's really important. And one of the traits that I think, or probably the most important trait there, is problem solving. So one of the ways that they are problem solving is by making decisions on team roles, what each person in the team might do, providing feedback to the team and constructive critique, providing support or solutions for questions and complaints, providing structure and schedule for project checkpoints. And also they're considering the variety of views and ideas and ways that they can integrate that into the project. So as you are leading a class project, these are problem-solving traits that a leader would need to have. So once again, in your reflection for someone who's leading a class project, these are the traits that you might want to focus on and bring into those reflection questions for your students. And I know that, you know, in my own class, I have students in teams and they create video projects for others. And there's always going to be that class or that team producer. And that team producer does all these things. So there's always, you know, a way, if you look at your actual assignments in class, that you can bring in this leadership opportunity. Another one listed on the website was presenting at a conference. And I think the trait that goes with that, best of all, might be responsibility. And some of the ways that you can talk about that or bring that up is that they need to have that confidence and autonomy for doing these presentations at a conference. They need to thoroughly understand their presentation topics. So they need to arrive having, you know, not only did a really good job of putting together the research and understanding the topic, they can communicate those things, those findings. They have a given time frame they must work with and some other requirements they might have to work with. And that's just a, you know, another leadership trait you have to have. You have to be able to show up at a certain time and do all the other things that are needed. And of course, professional attire, professional etiquette. You know, we're helping our students learn to work in that professional world. And if, you know, if you've been teaching long enough, you know, some of the emails you get, you wonder if that's ever going to happen. But, you know, presenting at a conference, it does require, that requires responsibility to these types of things. And then being a committee representative, to me, that leadership trait is trust. And the ways that I see that a person can build up that trust is by having authentic interactions, responding quickly with discernment so that, you know, others can trust you. Supportive in your actions to others, so you're supporting them in whatever they need to do. You're fair and you're also inclusive. So with all of these actions, then you are building that trust with others. And so, like I said, build that reflection around these types of things and ask the students, you know, how would you describe your actions towards this person or this project, and how are you being fair, or are you being fair, or things like that. And of course, finding consensus as well. Almost forgot that one. So leadership opportunities as well. You can create a project or assignment that solves a problem for others. You can have students that work on that problem solving skill that leaderships have, that trait, and ask them to work on a project that, you know, how would it solve a problem for others? So any topic, anything you teach, I think this can apply towards. So if there's a problem within your academic, you know, subject, how can students work on a problem and solve that? Also, you can offer more advanced assignments to encourage leadership. And I know that sometimes when I see opportunities for students that, you know, they may be in a beginner class, but if I offer this optional assignment and they take that, that gives them a chance to lead. It gives them a chance to show me what they're capable of. And it helps them feel a little bit more, I don't know, encouraged and confident. And so, you know, I do that a lot in my classes, and I think that's a way that you can encourage that leadership. And then come up with team projects with limitations. This is also for problem solving, and so working on that trait. So where they have to think inside the box. And when you do that, let's say you, for instance, because I teach video production, I may say that you have to create this video, but you can't. And I will say that with COVID, we have to do a lot of inside the box thinking. But, you know, you could say that, well, you can't use this type of gear to do this, or you can't do any narration with this. And when you actually have them think within this box, then they can be very creative and helps, you know, strengthen that problem solving skill. And that's a good way that you can bring in that leadership trait. So that's it for me. If you have any questions about some of the assignments I've done tied into that, just let me know.
All right, thank you so much, LaDonna. So if there aren't any questions, we will continue to the next next Maverick Advantage component. So the next one that we will be talking about is community engagement. So it happens within and beyond the boundaries of campus. We want to make sure that it is an intentional experience within an academic course. Some of these things could include service learning and experiential projects. Students and nonprofit agencies form a reciprocal relationship which fosters an awareness of civic and personal challenges, creates growth of mind and heart, and spurs innovation and skills. So some of the examples of community engagement or service learning in academic courses include having students help a local nonprofit to reach their goals, asking students to collaborate with the UTA department to fulfill their needs, having students work with the municipality to learn how to be civically engaged, and lastly, to support educational initiatives within the community. And of course, once again, these are just some of the examples that have been incorporated into some of the courses. And to share her experience, we have faculty mentor Pamela Johnson from School of Social Work.
Hi.
Hello.
Okay, so I've got 5 questions that were sent to me by Nolly, and I'm going to answer those questions. I don't have a PowerPoint. I'm just going to talk. One of the questions is, what made me decide to incorporate a Maverick Advantage activity into my course? And I'll tell you, I started as an adjunct teaching social work in schools, and the students loved it, and they loved hearing about my experiences. But over and over, I got, well, I want to know what it's like out there. I want to know. And I thought, well, how do I do that? Okay, well, in your internship, maybe you can go work in a school. Maybe you can find out about that. And then finally, I thought, you know, I have such great connections with schools. I'm going to see if I can connect with schools. And I went and talked to a faculty member in the School of Social Work, Dr. Pretorius, who said, hey, that's called service learning. So I got connected with the Service Learning Faculty Fellows program, and I was a Service Learning Faculty Fellow, and I was chomping at the bit. I was so excited about incorporating an activity and making my course all service learning, which I did. So what's the next question is, what changes did I make to the course? Because I already had a course that was working, but how do I make it experiential and have all the reflections and things like that? So I got rid of the books. I got rid of assignments that related to the books, got rid of tests, and we had a lot of reflection. We had to create intervention plans because students, let me back up a little bit. I connected with a school, got it set up where students would go into the school and provide interventions for students. So they had to come up with a plan, as well as do weekly reflections on all of the topics that I would be teaching anyway, like culture, diversity, values, things that went along with our social work values and objectives and EPOS and things that I was supposed to be teaching anyway. And then we had a final comprehensive presentation on the whole experience, which was a reflection. So they had many reflections throughout the whole semester. And they did this in the form of the what, so what, now what format that the Maffey faculty fellows are learning right now. So were there any difficulties in the process? Yes, there was a lot of in the beginning, just trying to get it set up, trying to get buy-in from different schools. So like I said, I started with one school and maybe a couple others, but then students would say to me, well, you know, I don't live in Arlington. What about Keller or Fort Worth or Burleson? Can I connect with this school on my own? Yes. So they would go out and connect with the school, and we would start that process. So I started with one school, one principal, and I ended up with about 13. And that would go back and forth semester to semester, depending on, what schools are involved, what students, where they live, the demographics, those things. Um, so I also used Dr. Chris Kilgore, who's no longer with us, and he would come in and talk about the what, so what, now what reflection, and how to manage that. So in the beginning, and schools are a chaotic place. So in the beginning, students had maybe trouble setting up with the school, or getting in, or getting organized, or getting a schedule. So there were things like that. But once we got the ball rolling, once they understood the process, it became just really fun and exciting, and way to discuss all of the cool things were going on in school as it related to social work and as it related to their community, how it was going to help them in their future career. Would they even like being in a school? They also learned about leadership. So we even kind of got that in there a little bit, because they had to stand up and be leaders of their program, leader within that school, leader of the plan that they created. So it did have some challenges, but they were fixed kind of in the beginning. And then year to year, to semester to semester, we may have some different ones. So did I notice any positive changes in the students' learning experience? Yes, they said they loved it, and they loved that it was hands-on, and they learned that, yes, I love working in schools, or no, I don't like working in schools, or this was a great experience because we have found, as y'all know, students love to learn, and they love to do hands-on things that can be applied to what they're reading. So they really loved the experience. I didn't get any negatives from it at all. I think the biggest negative was sometimes being able to get organized and get things up and rolling. But once we did, it was great. So what recommendations can I give to incorporating a Maverick Advantage activity into your course? Just do it. Just get out there and do it. Give yourself grace when things don't work out and when things get messed up, because they will. So you got to be flexible. You got to be cool. Don't worry about it. Be fluid, because things change, and schools change, schedules change, and know that if you just keep on going, it will turn out okay. So as a MAFI mentor, I'm happy to share my syllabus. I'm happy to talk about your plan and help you develop it if you need any help with that. So please feel free to contact me. I think you can also find a presentation I did last year or the year before on the CERTL website, listing kind of all the things that I just talked about. It also will list some of the exact things that students said about the program and what they liked about it and what they learned and how it helped them in their career going forward. So thank you for letting me share. I love, love, love it. It's just awesome.
Thank you so much for sharing your wonderful experience. If we don't have any questions, we will continue. So for the next one, we are going to be looking at the career development component. So it allows students to explore, engage, and develop through experiential activities that enable them to reach lifelong professional and personal success. It involves building, enhancing proficiencies and knowledge that will advance their careers. Some of these things include time and conflict management, team planning and development, marketable skills, as well as experience in diverse environments. So some of the examples of career development in academic courses are having students build their resume, or actively participate in a career expo and taking part in mock interviews, having them do an internship, or participate in field experiences and clinicals, including public speaking engagements within their field. Those are some things to include that will be very beneficial, and it gives them that exposure to what it would be like in their future career. And of course, developing a professional network through professional organizations within their college and beyond. So to explain how this could work, we have Dr. Cynthia Kilpatrick from College of Liberal Arts. Mute.
Okay. Sorry, took me a second to get unmuted there. So, so I want to talk a little bit about my experience with one of our TESOL internship classes. So, our TESOL program is in essence a teacher training program that trains teachers to teach ESL. So the internship class is the culmination of the undergraduate certificate in TESOL. So they've had teaching methods classes and they've learned a lot about teaching, and maybe they've had some experience with English language learners. And then in the internship, we want them to really get into a classroom. And this class was a career development class, you could say, before MAFI even existed. So I just want to talk a little bit about the class itself. So in this class, we have several big picture goals that really fit into career development. So in this class, our goal is that they teach. They need to gain experience as teachers because that is going to be one of the best things they can do in getting a position. Is the more experience they have, the more likely they are to get hired and gain more experience. So we want them to teach. But in addition to teaching, we want them to observe other teachers, and we want them to see how other teachers run their classroom. And we want them to reflect on, well, this happened in class that day. How would I have handled that? Would I have done the same thing that that teacher did, or would I have done something different? But then in addition to really honing their skills in the classroom, what we also want them to do is to make sure that as they leave this program, they have a solid resume and a teaching statement, because in our field of ESL teaching, those two items are almost always asked for anytime anybody applies for a job. And a resume, you may say a resume is a resume, but a resume is not a resume, right? That a resume for a TESOL professional might look different from a resume for individuals from other fields. And so we really want to help our students write a resume that is tailored toward their English language teaching experience and skills. And a teaching statement is really specific to our field, but it's something brand new and students have never had to do this. And often students sit frozen for weeks before they can get moving on this. So those are kind of our overall goals in terms of career development. So as I reworked my course to really think about, well, how can I help meet those goals for students? Some of the things that I did in this course originally, we said, well, here's you have to have this many hours of teaching in a classroom. And in recent years, I've revised that to say, well, I don't want you just to have 60 hours teaching in a classroom, because your goal isn't to get 60 hours. Your goal is to experience what it's like to be an ESL teacher. And there are non-teaching expectations in every teaching position. We all have them. And so now I have reworked my requirements so that I want students to work with an organization and not just gain hours teaching, because it helps them get a better feel for what it's like to actually work in an educational setting and in a school rather than just teaching a classroom, because there's more to teaching than just being in the classroom. I've also reworked my syllabus to include much more focus on the resume and teaching statement. So the first time I ever taught this class, submission of the resume was one assignment, and now there are 5 steps in that process. So their first step is they're supposed to go to the Career Center here on campus and get some help putting their resume together. And then they revise that resume, and then they work with another student in the class and they get feedback on their resume. and then they revise that resume. And then they work with me and they meet with me one-on-one, and we go through their resume with a fine-tooth comb, and we talk about how to make their resume stronger as an ESL teacher. And then they do final revisions and they turn it in. And I always tell them I reserve the right to send it back for more revision if it's not acceptable. But it's now, instead of one assignment, it's a process that we follow through the whole semester. And the same thing with the teaching statement. It's several different stages, and it includes revision 4 points to motivate students to actually do those revisions. And then I also focus my reflections more on helping students think about their changing role from being a student in a classroom to being the teacher in the classroom. And that seems to have really made a difference. This process has not been without difficulties. So one of the things is, students talk, and students come into the classroom expecting, oh, I can do XYZ because that's what students in the past have done. And as I've made those changes, I've had to make sure up front in the class to say to students, look, we're doing this differently, and this is why we're doing this differently, because it's going to make you a better teacher in the end, and it's going to make you a stronger TESOL professional. We have multiple faculty that teach this course in different semesters, so it's also balancing expectations across faculty as well as across students. And then, of course, this last year, COVID has been a huge challenge, but ultimately, I think it's been a great thing for our students, because right now, the world of online English language teaching is growing by leaps and bounds. And that very possibly might be the area where students get a job when they graduate. So by forcing their internship to go online, it's actually been beneficial to them because now they have experience teaching online. I feel like students, the final reflections for students have really spoken to the fact that students have really learned through this experience. And at the end of the class, wow, their resumes and teaching statements are so much better than what I used to get when it was an assignment instead of a process. So for other faculty who might be considering incorporating career development into their course, I encourage you first just to use campus resources. The Career Center on campus is a great resource. They'll work with your students, they'll come do presentations for you, and they can be really helpful. You don't have to feel like you have to reinvent the wheel, because some of the wheel is there waiting for you just to roll it along, right? But also, I really encourage you to think about career development, because development is a process. To think about your course and the assignments that you incorporate into that course as you pull in a Maverick Advantage activity into your course as a continual improvement process. And, thinking about, how can I help students develop this, and not just how can I help students submit this? Because that's what, a resume is never, well, it shouldn't be something that we do once and never look at again, and we, for the next 10 years hand out the same resume. Our resumes and our CVs require us to continually update them and revise them. And if we can reflect that in our classes, then that helps our students see that process as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Cindy. That was great. So we are going to move on to our next component, which is global experience. So global experience can provide meaningful interaction with the world for our students. Many people assume that when we say global experience or global engagement, they think abroad. However, it doesn't always have to be abroad, especially given the current situation that we're in with the pandemic. So whether it is abroad or within your own local community, students can gain valuable experience. These experiences help students develop global competencies and enhance cross-cultural understanding. Some of the examples of incorporating this component into an academic course could have students take part in a study abroad experience. It could have students virtually connect on a program with people in other culture or country. It can have students become involved in a world event, or having them work on multicultural projects within the local community. To share his experience, we have Dr. Joshua Nason from College of Architecture Planning and Public Affairs. So,
Thank you, Nali.
Mm-hmm.
Hi, everyone. I do have a couple of slides, nothing, not a lot, but a couple of slides. Let me see if I can get those to queue up here. Can you see that?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thanks for this chance to talk about this. Global connections, global engagement are very close to my heart, very important for me. I'm going to leave it in this view because it's covering up my notes when I expand it. Is it still visible? It's now telling me it might not be.
No, we can still see it.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. That's a nice warning Teams gave me. This is very close to my heart, and the first question that I was presented with is what made me decide to incorporate this into my course. I've actually been teaching study abroad for years at this institution and at a previous institution, and really value and place a high importance on global connections and global engagement. So this wasn't anything new to me, but there's something that Matthew's actually done in helping me understand how to make my teaching of even just study abroad much, much better. And that is to think about it beyond a class or a trip specifically, and more to the idea of connections and engagement. And I'm always trying to refine it in terms of what changes. But one thing that really helped me in this, and let me move through this, and one of the reasons I got involved, I should take a step back, is Susan and Lucinda came and talked to me about it and invited me. And this was an image of a couple of years ago, a study abroad trip, and Susan's daughter was on this study abroad trip. So that was a connection that we had, and I really appreciated Susan and Lucinda reaching out and recognizing what we were trying to do, not just in my study abroad, but in architecture. And in Kappa, we've been doing several trips and trying to make these as valuable as possible. But one of the big differences that happened for me when looking at MAFI is realizing how the other 4 MAFI distinguishing activities could fold into things like a study abroad trip or a class about global cities. My personal interest in this is I teach classes and do research on Asia's megacities, and so I'm really interested in Tokyo and Seoul and Beijing and Shanghai and all of the many other megacities, and what that means for us. And I have to say that presenting the cities as cities is one thing, but then talking about how to engage those cities at a deeper level has been really valuable to me as I've looked at this. And so incorporating things like undergraduate research, community engagement very directly in the courses have helped quite a bit. And then also leadership and career development, I think, are indirect benefits of going and engaging multiple cultures and witnessing other places and being immersed in new things, but things that you realize may be different, but also have tremendous similarities to how we're already working and thinking, and create a kind of empathy and crossover between our view of place and where we work now, and then honestly preparing students to work in a very globalized market. So the trips before, were very focused on the history of the cities and of the areas. Here's a couple of images of Japan, and the landscape and the art and the kind of cultural backing of those kinds of these kinds of adventures, these kind of courses. But then being able to talk about how we were going to restructure that previous to COVID. One of the changes we were going to do is try to engage communities and local academic institutions more specifically. So we wanted to see if there's any kind of service that we could do at a very kind of introductory level. Is there, instead of just going and walking through these amazing cities and seeing these wonderful things, is there another way we could help? One of the things, or two of the things that we've been trying to do in our programs is make them less about a tour of foreign places, and more importantly, and this is a very detailed and intricate thing that I can't fully detail now, is making our trips less colonial. And what I mean by that is a lot of times, well, I should just speak from personal context. As designers, we always want to go in and do something. And that usually comes from a frame of mind of fixing things or doing things better. And while certainly every city across the planet has things that they can improve on, we have to be very specific in our courses that we don't go with an idea of how to fix other places, because other places are other places for a reason. And they have a lot of different influences and histories and goals that sometimes our short-sighted solutions just will not address. So teaching students to not go in with an idea of fixing a place, but actually learning from a place is a significant shift that we've tried to embed within our study trips, our study abroad. And that, I think, is absolutely crucial. And that was one of the things that, for instance, some kind of community engagement, whether that's through a service project, through that's meeting local governments and officials. We always try to meet local architects and learn what it's like to work in that culture. Then not only meeting with the head architect, but meeting with interns, with young professionals that are pretty close in age to our students, and talking about how do they engage the city. Many of these young professionals are actually from all over the world as well, and they have tremendous insight on what it's like to come from Barcelona and work in Beijing, right? Or to come from New York and realize that Seoul is even better. No, I'm just kidding. But to see the differences in cities has been a really, really important aspect for them. One of the other changes, the third question is what changes did we, is what difficulties? We had a major difficulty. You may have heard of this thing called COVID that really came in, and anyone that was trying to teach study abroad, COVID wrecked us. And so what we had to do is we had to rethink this class. And what we did is we rethought it in terms of an online version. And so it was a major change. Instead of me and a colleague pictured here, John Maruschek, taking students to Seoul and taking students to Tokyo, we decided to make this about non-Western cities and pulled in a couple of really brilliant and talented colleagues. And we each presented specific cities. And so we presented in a 5-week summer semester, presented 4 cities intensely for a week each. And then the last week was a week where we did a survey across the 4 cities and asked the students to do research and write papers on relationships between these cities. So they could actually create a connection between Tokyo and Seoul, for example, or another city. And they could even be a city we didn't present, but a city, an international city, not a Texas city specifically, that had relationships, similarities, differences, kind of historic moments, elements of crossover, trying to create a sense of understanding of these places and their variety, but also some of the underpinnings, whether it's infrastructurally or architecturally, that connect these kinds of cities. And that shift online really made us actually change things. So for instance, we obviously weren't going to be doing a service project, but what we tried to do was engage communities by actually having Zoom conferences with people from cities, or for example, we could meet with an architect's office. We could pull in other influences that way, so that it wasn't just what John and I wanted to make sure it wasn't just 2 people. And I'll just be as blunt as possible. It wasn't 2 white men telling them about the world. And so we were able to work with some incredible colleagues. And for instance, I would have loved to teach Seoul because Seoul is one of my favorite places. But my colleague, Hai-Sin Jong, is from Seoul. And so it was very easy to say, Hai-Sin, why don't you teach Seoul and I'll talk about Beijing, right? But then pull in people from different age groups and different parts of the world that could talk about these things was also very important. We had to shift to an element of history. So we became more intensive about the history of places instead of visiting places, right? Now, we still did kind of Google Earth visits and photographic visits and kind of drop-ins and found drone footage. And we tried to replicate the experience of being in a city, but we tried to talk about engagement and connection beyond being in that place and actually just learning more specifically about that place. And that started to lead to ideas of undergraduate research, again, creating another crossover with one of the other Maverick Advantages, and getting students to do that research into that place from a third person, fully realizing that this is very much a removed kind of research, and that the hope is we can get more further into that. The positive changes, one thing I really saw in the students is instead of going to 1 city or 2 cities, they were really able to understand multiple places, and we were able to have very difficult conversations. Here's an example. As I was presenting Beijing, we talked about Tiananmen Square, and we specifically talked about the protests in Tiananmen Square. That's not something you can do standing in Tiananmen Square. That's not really a topic that should be brought up in public. However, we were able to talk about Tiananmen Square very candidly in an online conversation, and the students had to pull in other resources about that event and then talk about other events elsewhere in the world, so that we weren't isolating this one thing and saying, look how bad this was, rather actually talking about it in a context of human history. It also happened that that aligned with certain events in U.S. current life that same summer, and we were able to pull in some of our country's own misdeeds, if you will, and tie them into some similar kind of governmental behavior. So we're able to talk about the city not just as buildings and highways, but as cultural political systems as well, with multiple influences. And if I could actually give any recommendations, I would just plead with each and every instructor to think globally in every class that we teach and actually present it in a larger context beyond the information that's just in a paragraph or in a chapter. But I think global exchange, global engagement, global experience in this context is a little bit more broad. And I think if we can actually find ways to build understanding and empathy with other places and with other people, we will benefit in every instance. And I will say that our students are so incredibly diverse that many of our students are actually coming from these other places. And so they can bring that insight and that expertise. The thing that I would say, the students have grown incredibly in all of these opportunities, but so have I, because I've learned that even my kind of academic view of these places was very limited. And I've benefited tremendously from my students teaching me about their experiences elsewhere and pulling in these other voices as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Joshua. I'm so glad to hear that COVID has brought another aspect to your course, and it wasn't just like a hindrance, really, even though it's a global engagement. All right, thank you so much. Okay, so to continue, so here are some of the things that you would have to do if you would like to incorporate a Maverick Advantage component into your course and have it designated as a Maverick Advantage course. So first, of course, your course must contain a project, presentation, or experience that is directly related to the course material, and it has to be focused on one or more specific Maverick Advantage activities. So as many of the faculty mentors have mentioned earlier, you do not have to focus on just one single Maverick Advantage activity. If you can find a way to do so, you can include, let's say, undergraduate research with community engagement or global connections or leadership. Just there is a way to make your course fit multiple distinctions. So if you are interested in making that happen, we'll be more than happy to help you reach that as well. The students must complete structured reflection on the experience. This must be done within your course. The syllabus must be submitted to MAFI through an online form. And we have a data collection tool. So it is a self-enroll MAFI Canvas course. And these include pre-survey and post-survey of the course, and it's coming from the student's perspective. So these must also be utilized by the students. And after the final approval, the Maverick Advantage course will be added to the list of courses in which students may complete an Maverick Advantage distinguishing activity. If you're interested in seeing which courses have already been designated, you can check out our website. On it, we have a list of which courses are currently designated and which Maverick Advantage distinction it fits under. If you are interested in finding out more, we have some seminars and open hours. So in April, we have one seminar and one workshop. So on the 23rd is the CERTL Faculty Showcase. Here you can find out what our current faculty fellows are working on in terms of incorporating the Maverick Advantage activity into their courses. And on the 28th, it's a Wednesday at 11 o'clock. If you're interested in learning more about the MAFI Faculty Fellows Program, you can join us on Teams and we'll tell you more about the program. If you have a specific question about incorporating the Maverick Advantage activity into your course, you're always welcome to join us at our monthly Ask Matthew open hours. So for this month, we have it on the 10th, and for next month, we have it on the 7th. And these are both going to be on Teams. Do we have any questions? All right, so if there aren't any questions, here is the Matthew Resources website. So once again, our website, here's the Matthew Resources slide. Our website is matthew.uta.edu. You can contact us at matthew@uta.edu. If you are interested in seeing some of the video presentations, here are the links, and this PowerPoint will be available on our website, and then the links are also going to be available on our website. And then, of course, the pre and the post survey, once again, is through a self-enroll Canvas course. All right. So if you have any questions, we're more than welcome. You're more than welcome to ask. If you cannot think of a question at the moment, but you think of something later, you are, of course, you can feel free to reach out to us. We are available through email as well as Teams. Any one of us, Susan, Lucinda, or myself, or any of the faculty mentors will be happy to help.
Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, and yes, of course, thank you so much for faculty mentors for being here to share their valuable experience. If there aren't any questions, that will be it.
See you later.
Thank you. Have a good day. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so
Thanks for putting this
much.
together, Nali.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.